Okay.
Here we go. And we're live.
All right. Okay, this is. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. So this meeting is called to order. I'm Mayor Beverly H. Burks, and this is a special called city council meeting for Monday, December 30th at 6 p.m. And I'll start by doing roll call. Vice Mayor Johnson, Councilman Carroll.
Present.
Let's see. Councilman Carroll.
Present.
Okay. Councilwoman Hood,
Present.
Councilwoman Bell,
Present.
Councilman Perkins,
Present.
and Councilwoman Adi. She's not here yet. And so normally we have for the special call meeting, we don't have public comments, but if you would like to have public comments at this time, just to allow the public, I'd like somebody to add that to the agenda if possible and approve the agenda.
I have a motion, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I move to add a section to tonight's agenda for public comment.
A second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded that we add a section for public comments to the agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, motion passed. And then we'll move into public comments. We'll let the public speak first.
Dean Moore, Rayford Trail. I appreciate you putting it on public comment. It's sort of like a work session since this is the first time this has come up to the public. So I'd like to have more of an explanation before I make public comments so I understand what I'm commenting on. I'd like to have you allow us, as in a work session, to discuss the topic that we're discussing after the council's discussed it. But I understand it's seed money for the historic preservation, the Downtown Development Authority, but I'd also like to mention that the Historic Preservation Commission may be in need of some funds as well. We haven't determined what that is, but at some point we'd like to come back to the council to address those issues as well. So thank you.
Okay.
Brian Medford, Roland Street. I'll start. Where exactly is the $50,000 coming from? All the ARPA funds were dedicated already, which already discussed and reviewed funding source is being cut to fund the DDA. I seem to recall very robust discussions around ARPA funding requests for far less than this amount. Why should the city hand over $50,000 on such short notice with less scrutiny than was paid to other projects? In my opinion, the DDA plan on the agenda isn't a plan. It's a loose list of things the DDA hopes to address with this money. There's no specifics. Previous ARPA funding requests required a proper plan complete with cost estimates. What are the success metrics? How will the use of this money be measured? It says a report will be submitted by the end of 2025, but you even have the metrics yet. You need to define scope, budget, and timeline. How does this money align with ARPA goals? Will this pass a Treasury Department audit? Does it actually address negative economic impacts caused by the pandemic? Does it align with our existing development plans? The scope of services in the agenda is far too nebulous. I actually support having a DDA. Many of you know that I begged to get the DDA restarted for years after the previous mess with the CDA. But the DDA was left to molder for unknown reasons. Now suddenly it's an emergency. Rushing through the process is poor planning, and approving this request is poor governance. I'm fairly sure some of y'all up there understand what good governance means. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. All right, thank you all. And so we'll move into the new business, which is to approve a resolution for an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Clarkston and the Clarkston Downtown Development Authority in the amount of $50,000 to be allocated out of the American Rescue Plan Act funding, ARPA. And I will, say something in terms of this, Vice Mayor who put it on the agenda, but then B, I will allow one of our board members to speak about the item. If there's any, and I guess if Stephen's there, do I need to recuse is Stephen online?
No, he would like for us to call him in the event that we need him.
Mm-hmm.
So you can call or somebody on that side so that we can hear him.
Okay.
Do you need the number, Ms. Mitchell? You want her to call him?
Yeah, just
Well-
if you can, what we can do is allow John to start to talk as a board
Well,
member.
I would like to introduce the item and
Mhm.
explain how we got here tonight.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I do need to know if the mayor needs to recuse herself. But I put this item on the agenda after receiving an email from Dr. Garcia. We have wanted the DDA to get up and started, and we did not know you guys had those many stumbling blocks in the process. And now that you are working, and I saw the deadline date of December 31st, if we were going to use ARPA. All of you can't hear me, Mr. Moore?
Can you move the microphone closer to your mouth?
What about now? Well, I'm not gonna eat it, but I will try. Is that any better?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, great. Okay, so basically when I saw that if you guys were going to need startup seed money, it's happened a million times everywhere, anywhere. It's a standard process. It's not us funding the DDA. It's us giving you the money you need to do the research, to get the attorneys, the facility to do your 2, 3, 5-year plan. I don't see you being able to do much of anything without a dollar. So that was my thinking and trying to beat the December 31st deadline in the event that we were going to use any of the existing ARPA funds that have been freed up by the U.S. Treasury. As of this year, if your city received 10 million or less, and I would like for Stephen to back me up on this, you don't have to itemize. It doesn't have to be COVID related. It's just whatever you want to do. They're not even gonna, that was on a webinar. I think they had 3 in this year alone. It was 3 webinars telling you, spend the money, get your city back up and running, and we will not itemize you. So I took it upon myself to put this item on the agenda to see if the city could help the DDA do what we thought you guys were doing, but we forgot that you needed seed money. I did anyway. So I called Stephen, I called the interim city manager, and I asked what could we do to assist the DDA to keep that tax district from entering into the city of Clarkston. That was my biggest thing. I did not want to introduce a tax district here and put anybody who has a business in turmoil because we were trying to beautify the city. So that is why we're here. And at this time, I don't know what you guys have worked on. Stephen is on the line.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Quinn. Are you there, Stephen?
I'm here, but I couldn't hear anything since you last talked to me.
Okay, well, basically, we have a couple of questions, and I wanted to see if you could help me discuss the itemization of our ARPA funding according to the U.S. Treasurer and shine a light on the whole startup money piece. It's not new, but I just wanted to, from a legal perspective, if you could put that out there for us.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Madam Vice Mayor. The ARPA funding from the federal government, obviously was part of a bill passed by Congress. and it says in there certain uses that the money is for. And it also says that the Department of Treasury will make rules to administer this. So the original rules were we've been dealing with for the last few years, like you can use the money for anything to do with COVID, for public safety, for infrastructure. And over time, the allowed uses have become broader and broader. And about 2 weeks ago or so, the city manager and the finance director and I attended a meeting that was hosted by the League of Cities, sort of the national version of GMA. And the speaker at that meeting was a representative from Department of Treasury. And what we learned at that meeting was that the latest Treasury rule has essentially created a $10 million standard deduction for local government spending ARPA funds. What that basically means is that anything up to 10 million, they will just presume to be in the category of offsetting lost revenue. And so, you know, in essence, at this point, under the very latest guidance from the Treasury Department, the use of ARPA funds up to $10 million is effectively unrestricted.
Okay.
Okay.
And Vice Mayor, did you have another? And I can do
Oh.
both. So Stephen already said I can do both. As far as being presiding.
Okay, great. And can you also elaborate on the startup money for the DDA?
I'm sorry, I heard
Basically-
elaborate in the DDA.
Yes, have you, basically, the question is it common? Has it been done? Or are we inventing something here?
For the city government to disperse funds to the DDA. No, that's certainly not unheard of. I think that's routine. So we have, as I just discussed, the ARPA funding means that the DDA, just like any other entity, can be funded with that money. And it actually has less restriction based on that latest guidance, less restriction compared to our general revenue tax dollar funds that the city receives. So, you know, with those funds, the city could enter into a similar intergovernmental agreement as long as the thing that the DDA is doing is something that the city can do with money, and the DDA is our agent. So, you know, in the future, if or now, whenever, if there's an interest in spending general fund money that the city receives from its ad valorem taxation, then we would need to be a little more exacting about the deliverables that the DDA will provide and tying those to the amount that they're receiving. But, you know, as recited in the intergovernmental agreement draft, it states purposes that the DDA can execute under state law. And so we have created a contract that, if approved by both sides, you know, is an appropriate disbursement of funds, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Any other, I'm not.
Yeah, okay. For that part with Stephen, is there any other piece to that before we let John speak? All right, and John, would you please come up? Yes. Thank you for asking the question.
Good evening. My name's John Gagne. I am a 18-year business owner here in Clarkston. I own the Brockett Pub. And I was asked if I was interested in the DDA, and I it said yes. So I'm a member of the DDA, and I'm committed to Clarkston's growth and revitalization, and whatever I can offer, to help that cause. And I think, when the council, and by the way, thank you all for having this special meeting, because I think it's really important. But I really thank you for your time, because, I know you're all busy. But I must say, when the DDA was voted last year, there was not a mention of seed money or any type of financial budgetary items for the DDA, because I think it was kind of done quickly. And when we started in January, we really didn't have a path as far as money goes, because, we were just relying on, city, like kind of borrowing city funds for training, which we did a lot of. We had a lot of training, learned the methodology of what you all do here with the first motion, second motion, and all that. That takes a little bit of learning. And we've had our successes without funding, and we kind of just, of course, we're not being paid. We're all volunteers in the DDA, except for the mayor, but that's part of our thing. And we've taken on some initiatives this year in 2024. We toured the city, visited several businesses, kind of learned a little bit about the geography. I live in Decatur, so I'm not 100% with the geography in here in the city of Clarkston. And we successfully mapped the downtown district. And I think that's an important step for, building a foundation for us to proceed. And in order to proceed, we can't just, we need the money. Somehow we have to go forward without the money. If we have to, I don't know, where the DDA's necessity is there if we don't have money. I mean, we have to, we would need to have an attorney to give us guidance, because remember, we are a separate entity, although very involved with the city. We have a relationship with the city, but we have to be considered legally a separate entity. So with that in mind, we've got to generate money, and how to do that is going to be kind of a down the road scenario, to where either we have leasing properties or tax revenue coming in. That's down the road. It just it's an imperative thing to get started. We've already started, but we really haven't started as far as the nuts and bolts and the important aspects of the DDA. And I think you all agree that having a DDA for your city is a beneficial thing, in the sense that you're able to get more incentives, more things associated with tax incentives, abatements, things like that, to bring companies in. Because Clarkston is a city that people want to come in and develop, and they want to make improvements. And I think it's important that we look at our existing businesses as well, and maybe do a survey, or just do an analysis of what the feeling is out there, what the businesses need, and what we need to do going forward. And so where we need the money, we need the money for attorney fees. We need the money for third party economic development companies, architects, grant writers. I don't know. I mean, we have a lot of stuff, and $50,000 can get used up quick. But I think it's a starting point, and I'm committed to the DDA, and I'll do whatever it takes to see it through.
Thank you, John. And I wanted to make sure, Richard, if you could maybe come up and talk about what you've seen in terms of economic development as it relates to the Downtown Development Authority, and even from the numbers that we have, as far as like. Oh, is Stephen on? Do we still have Stephen? So Stephen, is it, since I'm on the DDA, that there's not an issue for me to speak, correct? I don't know if he heard me. Stephen? Hello, Stephen? I think he's on. Stephen?
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Attorney Quinn, is it, since I'm on the DDA, it's still not an issue for me presiding?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. The state law contemplates that the same individual can serve in both of those capacities, and so this kind of arrangement, or just the fact that an intergovernmental agreement between the two would occur, is routine for DDAs, which almost always have a member, and they don't have to recuse themselves. So it's fine for you to oversee the meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, and Mr. Richard?
All right, thank you, Mayor. So I've been working with the DDA for about 2 months now. And since it is a brand new organization here in the city, they're starting from practically nothing. So I think kind of what this proposal is funding to essentially start the strategic plan to guide downtown development. And the strategic plan would essentially put in place measures for the DDA to start creating its own funds. So I think what this proposal here was intended to do is to help them get that process started so they can start making their own money in the future. And I briefly was able to read over the budget that was sent over from the mayor earlier today. It looks to be relatively accurate from my knowledge as well. And I think it would really help the DDA get off the ground and start moving with the strategic plan.
All right, thank you, Richard. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
We can ask, the public can come back up if you would like to. No? Okay.
Still haven't answered, where's the money coming from? All this was dealt, everything was put out. Y'all had a special meeting the other week to say we have all the money lined up. What's getting shortchanged? Where's it coming from? $50,000.
So it's my understanding, and Mr. Quinn, I think you were you on the call when we had it? Oh, Tammy's on the phone? Oh, no, the meeting last week. Were you on the meeting last week? I mean, when we had, yeah. So we had the 135,000, which did not have contracts associated with that one, that account. And so we said to put that over in the general fund. So that the public works was the amount that did not have any contracts associated with it at all. And so when our financial director, actually, I think our councilwoman brought it up. Okay, brought it up. There were no contracts associated with that item within the ARPA funding. And so that's where.
Yeah, that's consistent with my recollection that it was just in a general way moved over to public works salaries in order to make sure that it was obligated, but that it would still be available to re-obligate, if you will, until the end of the year.
Public works salary. Where it was from.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm here to pay Paul. And y'all said you would allocate everything every week.
So it, okay,
If I may,
yes.
I don't think that's 100% accurate. The line item that was in Public Works was set aside for building repairs.
Right.
And so it was reallocated. Basically, we were in a position where we found out, our staff informed us that if we couldn't just designate a budget category for something in DOK in terms of compliance with ARPA, we had to obligate it. What they meant by that was there's certain things that we have to have a signed contract for to consider the funds obligated before we lose that money. Or there are some things such as public work, like salaries. There's other funds that can just happen internally that we don't have to have a signed contract for. And so the idea, we did this with 3 different items. One is related to the social worker. I think one was related to some administrative services. Then one was related to public works. It's not that the funding was just, completely not earmarked for anything. It's just that we didn't have any signed contracts or, responses to bids for repairing, specific buildings or performing specific work. And so what we did was, the idea behind the motions was to basically take the ARPA funding, apply it to things that were being taken out of our general fund, but still qualified for ARPA, so we wouldn't lose the funding, and then do a budget amendment in 2025 to then reallocate that money towards building repairs or social worker for the police, or for, I think, administrative was the third one. And I could be wrong about that. I'd have to go back and look at the details. And so I'd say it's sort of a little bit of both ends. They weren't obligated to a specific project, but it was set aside to take care of building repairs. My understanding was the idea was, once we move out of our current space into our new space over at Park North, it'd give us some freedom to kind of assess what needs to be done, with both this and the annex building. But I could be wrong in there remembering that.
That's it. And I think Ms. Grant is on the line, if you can let her talk.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Okay. So the $135,000 we did not have contracts for, and those funds were in the general fund. And so what we did was a swap. We swapped the ARPA funds for general funds, and we just, instead of having equipment and repairs to the building, we actually used salaries. So that means that $135,000 was being now obligated. And if we take the $50,000 now, it's going to be a difference. It's additional $50,000 that's going to impact the general fund. That's additional fundings that will have to be paid for, because instead of $135,000, we're actually going to be putting $185,000 to the general fund.
So we're
Yes.
adding instead of subtracting?
Yes, ma'am, because what we did, the $135,000 was equipment, and repairs to the building was the $135,000. So instead of having equipment, we swapped it in $135,000 in salary and benefits. So that was an even swap. So there was no impact. It was neutral. It was $135,000 that was swapped out. Instead of calling it equipment, it's called salaries. And so now we're taking an additional $50,000. We're putting it into the ARPA funds, but we have to pay it out. It has to come from somewhere. So in order for this to balance out, we're going to have to take back $50,000 from the salaries and put it back over to the general fund.
Okay. So is there another, is that the only place for the funding to be taken out of?
If it's going to general fund, if we're going to swap from ARPA, we're going to have to put it back. The general fund will have to bear the cost. The overall budget will be the same. However, general fund will be the one that will be impacted unless we put it in another special fund.
Okay. So
Now, and I'm not sure if we got confirmation. There may be one other possible place.
Okay. City Manager.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor. So one other option would be if you refer to your spreadsheet that we provided to you, there's a line that says grants administration or administrator contract. We currently have a contract with CHA Solutions to do our grant funding or grant writing for us and administration. You can take $50,000 from that line item because right now I have received word from our representative that we work with that they are not in a position to do a contract with us before the December 31st, 2024 deadline for ARPA. So that would be an option also. We can remove the $50,000 from 2025 for the grants administrator. and then look at maybe picking them up in 2026. Of course, that will require us to do a termination of the current contract that we have. But I did want to present that to you as a option for the funding for the DDA.
Okay, thank you.
And Ms. Tammy, with us doing this in 2025, who would offset these grant writing assignments?
Well, it would have to fall on staff, or we would just have to maybe hold off on doing, I guess, big grant applications where we would normally use somebody in a contracted position until 2026. Some grants, you know, the council you are familiar with, we've been able to do in-house, for example, the SS4A grant that we received $1 million from for the federal government. Our city engineer assisted us with that one. We did have the grant person who was on at that time submit the application, but Mr. Kaiser did do a lot of the legwork regarding applying for that grant. Again, it may have to be something that would just fall on staff internally. But you know, we may be able to work it out for at least, you know, the next year, if that is an option that the council would like to consider.
And that could also be professional services too, is that correct? That you
It
could,
could be, yes, taken out of
Okay.
the general fund, yes.
right, okay, so now we have the, oh, Jamie has, Councilman Carroll,
Who's next?
I have a question.
and
Is it
then,
for Tammy? Is there a question for Tammy?
oh, yeah, Councilwoman Hood has a question.
City Manager, I think this is new information for me. When we, let me know if this is correct, but when we were ensuring that we would meet the deadline for allocating ARPA funding, it was our assumption that we could add some ARPA money to additional years of the grant writing contract. And so what you're saying is it appears that we would not be able to do that and meet the deadline. Is that correct?
So we are prepared to, but when I reached out to CHA Solutions, who we currently have a contract with, they are not in a position to be able to sign a contract extension form before tomorrow.
So what are the, yes, that's my understanding of what you said. It wasn't a problem on our part that we were willing, but it was not possible to be done. So are the implications of that as it stands right now, with no action on that amount of money, that money would be lost?
That money would be lost if it's not reallocated. Yes, ma'am.
By when?
Tomorrow.
By
Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
By tomorrow. Okay, this is brand
Yes,
new information.
And it's brand new
I'm so
information
glad
for
you're
us as
sharing
well.
that with us, because
Yes, ma'am.
we have to act today, if not tomorrow, to secure that money.
Yes, ma'am. And we just received word
that-
via,
That puts an urgency to this meeting tonight, correct?
yes, ma'am. And what I wanted to share with you, I just received confirmation from our representative, who I've been in contact with all of last week, including the date of our meeting. Prior to our meeting, we were trying to get in touch with her as well. And she just sent that to me this evening. So that's why I was able to share that with you.
Okay, so this puts a different spin on what actions we need to take tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And
And I have a question for Miss Tammy. So
Yes.
we can do, so basically, Miss Tammy, since the $50,000 is freed up, we do not have to allocate the entire $50,000 to them. If we designate this as a line item, it'll preserve it. basically, we can do like we did, we're gonna allocate it, but if they decide or we decide to give them $25,000, could we then put the other somewhere else like we did everything else, or would it be too late?
Yes, you can do that, as long as it's done, yes, before tomorrow's
By
deadline.
tonight?
Yeah, so we
Okay.
can,
Yes.
so you can do, because let me make sure we're clear. So for 2025, for the grant writer position,
Mhm.
that funding could be allocated to the DDA as part of the seed. But the monies for the 2026
Mhm.
would need to be allocated somewhere else.
That is correct.
Because that's not what, because the way we had it was for 2025 and 2026 for the
2026.
grant writer,
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Okay, so if we were to move forward with the seed funding, we would need to take care of that for 2025. And then for 2026, we would need to reallocate that fund somewhere in terms of the general fund.
Yes. That is correct.
Did you say correct?
Yes, I said that is correct.
Okay, all right.
So to clarify, we have 2 years worth of grant funding for the 2 years of ARPA funding that our intention was to use to fund the contract for the grant writer. But because of the deadline, neither funding for 2025 nor 2026 for that purpose can be achieved by the deadline. So it is not only the 2025, but the 2026 funding for that purpose needs to be dealt with tonight. Can you tell us what that total is?
Yes, ma'am. It's $100,000, 50,000 for 2025 and 50,000 for 2026.
Thank you.
So from a motion perspective, what we would need to do if we were to allocate the funds, because we have to have an agreement, we would have to say that the seed money would come from the grant administrator, and that we would have to then say for the 2026 that we would need to allocate that to the general fund. Is that correct? I just want to make
Is
sure.
that a question for me, Mayor?
For whomever.
Okay,
Or
so
look,
this is
Ms. Grant.
slowly to, so what you can do, the $100,000 could be allocated for over a period either all in 2025 or split it between 2025 and 2026. You just have to allocate it before by 2026. So if you choose to put it all in 2025, you can, or you could put part of it in 2026. It's however you choose to use it, long as
Okay.
you allocate it in that time period.
Okay, and then
Okay.
Councilman Carroll.
So the way I see it, there's basically two problems. First, this 100,000 is unallocated and needs to be allocated, or otherwise we lose it. The second problem is the DDA funding. And in my mind, the only one that has to be resolved tonight is the 100,000, which we could just allocate to the general fund. And then I think we can wait until we have a specific proposal from the DDA for how much money they need in 2025, and then we can allocate some money to them from the general fund. But I don't see it. I see a need to address the 100,000 tonight. I don't see a need to necessarily give 50,000 to the DDA tonight when we don't have a specific proposal yet from the DDA on how they would use that money. So in my mind, I think we can resolve the immediate problem of 100,000 without having necessarily to fund the DDA tonight.
Okay. And then what I'll do, Councilman Carroll, I don't, because you're not present, let me send you some information. And then that way you can see that as well. Any other questions from the body? Yes,
So I don't
Councilman
necessarily
Bell.
have a question, so thank you for providing the agenda. My only thing is around, and I guess this is a question for Stephen for the IGA. This is in regards to section A, well, section 1A, the payment of the DDA. If we choose to move forward with it tonight, I think that that line item that says no later than January 15th, 2025 needs to be adjusted. And that's upon receipt of a contract of a consultant. Oh, my mic is on.
Yeah, it's on.
What about now? Okay, so I'll recap real quickly. My question is in regard, it's not even it's a question and a statement. It's in regards to the IGA that we have before us, right? If you go to section 1, subsection A, the payment of the DDA, my thought process is if we decide to move forward with this, then it doesn't need to be January 15th. It needs to be upon receipt of a contract with a consultant. How I see this, and I appreciate the document, and me and you, Mayor, we talked about this, right? My thought process is you don't have any procurement or any acquisition of property. So I don't see the need for legal services today. Now discuss that. I do think that the DDA does need a consultant to help with the vision and direction of where you're going, but also the mapping that needs to take in place in order to identify the opportunities. And then in addition to that, I do think that you need somebody on that's a consultant that can help with the execution of the plan, but also the development. And when I mean development, I mean fiscal response, fiscal prospects. Because they're a foundation, there is the Community Development Association, there are private entities, there are public-private partnerships that y'all can get into. And I don't know that y'all are in training, so y'all don't know all those entities. And Richard, I'm looking at you. You have been supervising them for 2 months, and they have one option of the tax zone. I don't know. I personally don't think that the city is ready for a tax district, so I appreciate the Vice Mayor bringing this before us. However, there are other options that we could have went into that I don't think that y'all know about or that were presented to y'all. But as it relates to the IGA, I think that subsection A needs to be upon receipt of a contract with the consultant that is aligned with your scope of work. That's the plan, and that's help identifying prospects to get y'all funded for long term. And then the other part of the IGA, and Stephen, if you can hear me, if you can't, lean in or let me get closer to him, is the reporting piece. I think that this came before us after, there were conversations, y'all having meetings that we just didn't know about, right? And so because of that, I think that having that reporting on a consistent basis, because we can't help y'all if we don't know what's going on, what the needs are, what the gaps are, what challenges you're having, right? And so, yes, this could be potential seed money, but as the Vice Mayor mentioned, this is a standard process, right, where they get you started. But I want to make sure that this is enough to get you started and sustain you to you have a consultant that's going to work with you and give you the advice to keep you moving steadily and scaling and not halting and stopping and then having to come back to us. So I do think that those are some things that I would like to see change, but primarily if we move forward as a body, my focus is the consultant to help with the vision and the plan. And then also to help with the fiscal responsibility of helping y'all identify those sponsors that can help y'all have a revenue stream that's ongoing and consistent.
Thank you. And Mr.
Please go to the
Go to the
microphone,
mic.
please.
And that's it.
I completely agree. If I can respond to that, with having a strategy and a set way to go about it, and not trying to make excuses, but we did have a situation where there's a transition with the economic development coordinator here for the city, and so while we were thinking to propose a budget to the city council, late in 2024, like November, we were talking about it. Then we lost Miss Cameron, and we're just kind of in limbo. So with that in mind, that's why I want to just emphasize that for the DDA to be successful, yes, we have to have a plan. We have to have lined up objectives. We have to be accountable, but we can't do that without money.
Mayor.
Yes, Councilwoman.
Yes. Councilmember Bell, I share your concerns about funding without a lot of precise information and plans. But right now, they have a zero budget. They can't even pay for printing. I don't know how they can even begin to do their work without basic seed money. What that amount is, I'm fine with 50,000. I'm open to other considerations, but they got to start from go. And I don't see how you start from go without some money. And I don't know if training is going to cost money. I don't know what sort of support, administrative support, if any, they need. I don't know if they're going to apply for grants once they find out what grants are available. Who's going to write the grant and who's going to copy the grant and so on and so forth. So I just think it is a necessity from my perspective that they get some seed money to start working. And I realize they don't have a budget. They do have a budget. Here. So that's my perspective. Whether to a point that was made earlier, whether Councilmember Carroll said we the thing that has a deadline is the 100,000. So I'm okay on however we do this, but I feel strongly that we shouldn't expect the baked cake from the DDA when they can't afford the ingredients.
Yes.
So I just want to be clear, Councilmember Hood. I'm not saying to not give them any seed money. To the point that has been made before us and the consistency of how DDAs are set up and ran, most municipalities start giving them money initially for them to start. I don't have a problem with that. What I said is I want them to make sure they're moving in a strategic direction with benchmarks and they know where they're going and they have a desired outcome and they're able to measure it and evaluate it so we'll know it's having an impact and effect and being effective. That's why in subsection A, section 1, subsection A, it talks about the payment. What I'm saying is until we have a contract with a consultant that can guide them, because as the representative, John, from Brockett Pub mentioned, they are volunteers. So you're asking a lot from them without them having the expertise, the time, or the knowledge. So my suggestion is I don't have a problem with giving them money. My suggestion is that we don't give them money until they have a contract with a consultant that can adequately guide them.
I have a question.
Sure.
My question is for Councilwoman Bell. Councilwoman Bell, they don't even have a meeting place to meet a contractor, to sit down and negotiate with the contractor, to make sure that a contractor is familiar with their city or anything. So that, are you wanting to split it in half or, but I think that seed money is just that. You got to plant the seed before you can expect the harvest. So to expect them to come in the door on February the 1st with a contract, with a contractor may be putting the cart before the horse. So I think that if we've entrusted these people with our city, I know we can entrust them with a couple $1,000 to get started. We know it's going to take a lot more than $50,000. So I just want to, they're motivated now. They finally got up and running, and I want to give them whatever we can give them. I don't care if it's $10. Just something to let them know that we appreciate their volunteer services and dedication to the beautification of the city. But I don't think A should be changed unless we want to push it back and give it to them at the beginning of February, give them 30 more days to get some things in order. But it's just a delay in my eyes because they already had such stumbling blocks. But I respect the changes.
And then we can have a question.
Okay, so my response to that is that the deadline for them to get a consultant does not have a deadline. I never gave a date or a time frame. What I said is they need to identify a consultant. You can identify a consultant by going online. Richard can identify a consultant for them today.
Well,
you don't need to have a meeting space for that.
Now, with that being
Oh,
said,
but Richard is the consultant.
may I?
Oh,
Yes.
With that being said, Richard's services are not offered to the DDA.
Not
as
Richard.
long, wait a minute, as any services of the cities can't be utilized by the DDA unless they pay, they can't use any of our services. Now, I get Richard is a consultant. You may have people you know and can invite them, but I'm just saying, they got to be in a situation where they can meet, they can tour. They got to show this consultant what's going on, potential visions. I don't think one visit here in the city is going to be what's going to be needed to enter a contract,
So,
right?
so Councilwoman Bell,
Mm.
I think we can, in terms of the DDA, we will make that one of our processes in terms of finding a consultant. Because regardless of what happens, we're gonna need a consultant for that. And in terms of the date, if the body needs to change the date, we're okay with that. So we would like for you to move forward in terms of what we can do with a decision. And we would appreciate whatever you do, especially now knowing that there's a $50,000 amount that is available. So first, thank you for taking up your time on a Monday for the holiday, and we thank you for that. And so if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a question or a motion from the body. Councilman
A couple
Perkins.
more questions. Is Ms. Grant still on the line?
She's still on, Ms. Grant.
Yes, I'm here.
So Ms. Grant, to one of the questions that Councilman Carroll posed earlier in terms of there being sort of two separate issues before us. One is making sure we don't lose ARPA funding, and then the other is making sure the DDA has the resources it needs to be successful. Going to the first question, if we were to reallocate this money to the general fund, would that prevent us, I guess, what would the process look like if we were to right now make sure we don't lose the money, put it in the general fund, and then set up an IGA, in the next month or two with the DDA using general fund money? Is that something that we could do, or is there anything that prohibit us from doing that?
No, so that's at the discretion of the council. So we could come back, if, let's say, for instance, you don't allocate ARP funds, then you could go back and you could allocate general funds. We'll just do a budget amendment, which we'll have to do anyway.
Okay, and so basically what we could do tonight is say we want to reallocate the $100,000 from the grants administrator contract to the general fund. That would give you all the direction you need to make sure that money doesn't get lost. And then we
Yes,
can come back in a month or two, make sure we've got the details worked out on this to everybody's satisfaction, and then set up a budget amendment with an amended contract to make sure the DDA has the resources it needs.
that's correct.
Okay. Now, one more question related to that. So, because I'm a little unclear on the 2025 and 2026 allocation. My understanding was that we received two tranches of funding. So are those two, is 2025 and 2026 sort of wrapped up in the same check? If I can be.
Yes, sir, it is. So what the law states is that we have to obligate. So we have until 2026 to spend the money in totality. We have to spend it all by 2026 or return whatever we don't use. So if we obligate it, then we have until that time. So this meeting today is just to obligate the funds, make sure that the funds is obligated, and we have it identified as projects.
Got it. And so even if we were to obligate $50,000 to the DDA from, this line item, it's $100,000, we would still have to allocate the other $50,000 to the general fund.
To somewhere else, yes, sir.
Okay, gotcha. And then, thank you, Ms. Grant. And then is
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Quinn still with us, or is he?
Yes, Mr. Quinn's still with us.
So, Mr. Quinn, I know we spoke earlier today on this, but looking at the agreement as it stands, is there anything, I know you mentioned that ARPA funding has a little bit of, fewer strings attached than pulling stuff from the general fund in terms of making sure that there's a clear benefit to taxpayers. Is there anything in the IGA agreement that we have before us that would prevent us from funding that through the general fund?
Well, the my opinion is no, but so no, it's not prevented. General fund could pay for the listed purposes. I mean, I don't have that in front of me, but as long as what the DDA is doing with the money is going to benefit the city, including promoting the development of the downtown, then that's fine. If we were to use general funds to fund an IGA with the DDA, the main difference is that we would need a little more detail on the deliverables to establish a relationship between the dollars spent and the services received.
How much more, when you say a little more detail, what are we talking about here?
I mean, right now what we have is categories. So I think we would want to add more specifics in terms of what they're going to do and also in terms of what they're going to deliver. I mean, is that adequate for an answer? It's hard to say kind of in a vacuum, but basically it's all about if we're using general funds, it becomes a matter of avoiding a gratuity that, you know, the DDA is a public entity, but the city still cannot give it a gift. It has to do a quid pro quo and receive consideration in the form of services or property or something that has a value in exchange.
Got it. And so if we were to, for example, say, I mean, just add a little detail, like a specific consultant or a specific type of consultant, would that satisfy that requirement?
I think so, yes. I mean, obviously when it got down to doing it, I would want to look at the exact wording and stuff, but conceptually, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I did have one more comment related to
Okay.
it. So my thought, and I believe a number of people have sort of brought up how some of this was done quickly at the beginning. You know, there wasn't funding allocated to the DDA when it was set up. You know, we filled the seats. My suggestion is that we go ahead and move this $100,000 into the general fund, and we make sure it's not lost. And it just gives us I don't think we need to kick this to the summer. I don't think that would do y'all any favors. But I do think it might be a good idea for us to at least maybe let this go through a work session. Just get this stuff in writing, just to make sure we don't end up in the same situation here, you know, not too far down the road where, you know, we actually missed something. And we're kind of having this conversation again with a different amount of money available to us. And so my suggestion would be that we just, take our foot off the gas. We're not losing any money. I think that's the big urgency, or the thing that's been pushing the urgency on this. And then maybe push this to, January or February. We can continue to have those conversations. I'm more than happy to meet with y'all and, however I can help, make sure that we're all clear on this. And then look at doing a budget amendment with a real clear, real solid contract and a real solid plan. I think at this point, it'd probably have to be early February. So that would be my suggestion for the council.
Councilwoman Bell.
So, thank you, Councilman Perkins. My only thought process is, though, based on what Stephen just indicated, they actually need a strategic plan to say services and deliverables for the purpose of us if we move it to the general fund instead of the ARPA, right? I'm not saying that it should be a loose agreement. I would never say that. But what I'm saying is that if we really want to truly invest in them and give them the adequate time that they need, then my personal opinion is that we would have to start with something or some type of contract to even get them to develop the plan because they need some guidance, right? If we wait and move it to the general fund, based off what Steve just indicated, it seems as if they would have to come to us with a full strategic plan with services and deliverables and outcomes, because it would be a tick for tat. Like, we gave them something, they have to give us something, right? And I don't know, I don't know, and maybe y'all can tell me if that's something that y'all would be able to do in that short period of time, because I think because of the delay that we've already seen, I don't know that they would. I don't know that expanding it and then saying, hey, here's another barrier to get access to the fund. Now maybe we can reduce it if you want to, or not give as much, but I don't know that putting it back in the general fund, just because of that barrier there, if they would have the expertise, knowledge, and time to give it back to us for them to move on. That's just my personal opinion.
And
Well,
we'll do
my
that
understanding, I'd be
first.
interested to hear Mr. Quinn's response to that, because my understanding is we could do the exact same agreement with some tweaks to it. It wouldn't prohibit us from using the funding that way.
Okay.
Mr. Quinn, did you hear Councilwoman Bell's question? Or
Sorry, I could not hear the details of that.
So Councilwoman Bell. Yeah,
Hi, Attorney Queen. Can you hear me?
can you hear her?
I hear the mayor very well.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So Attorney Quinn, what I'm asking is based on what you just indicated, it seems as if we move it to general funds, there'd be more stipulations, right? Almost to the point where they would have to come up with something that's more strategic, that identifies the services that they would give us, like a tick for tat situation. And I think that would take even more time. I think the easier route is to go through the ARPA funds, but I want to make sure that I'm clear on what you just indicated as it relates to moving the $100,000 to general fund, which I know we have to move the fund. I'm not opposed to that. What I'm saying is, for the purposes of investing into this entity to actually create economic growth and increase visibility, what's the best route? Oh, no, you're not gonna give me, you're gonna give me the legal answer. What is the most feasible?
But I think I understand the question.
Okay.
And you let me know if I didn't get it right. I mean, there's a policy decision to be made here by the city council. But if you're asking what is the way to give, and strike that, I shouldn't use the word give, but to fund the DDA that is going to put the least strings attached, that would be this ARPA opportunity. And you were correct when you stated that if the agreement were funded using the city's general fund from ad valorem tax, then it would need to be, as you said, a tit for tat, meaning that the services are at least reasonably estimated to have a value equal to the dollars being provided to the DDA.
One more question, Steve.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
think about this from a capacity perspective, right? We know what a DD is, and we also know the time frame in which it's taken to get to here. Do you still think that utilizing the ARPA fund is the most feasible option over moving to the general fund? I just want to make sure I'm clear about the process of allocation if we decide to move forward.
Right. Well, the ARPA money is there and ready to spend. I think it's fair to say that that's the easiest, and it's a question for the council whether that's the best.
Strings attached, Steve. I don't like that word. I don't like that phrase. Gotta give me something else. This seems like, okay, I don't have anything.
Okay. All right. So, Vice Mayor Johnson.
Stephen basically summed it up. So I have no questions, but I have a motion.
Okay.
I move to move $100,000 from the grant administrator ARPA line item to allocate $50,000 for the DDA and $50,000 back into the general fund salary line item.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it has been properly moved and seconded to allocate. And I guess the question for Mr. Quinn is it allocate or obligate? Just trying to make sure I get the terminology right. Oh, you got the phone. I'm holding the phone like I have it. I'm sorry. So should it be obligate the 50,000 from the grant writer section and then the other 50,000 to the general fund? I just want to make sure in terms of the obligate.
Well, I think that the DDA part would be to approve the IGA.
Okay.
And to reallocate the funds from the grant writer to that in a 50,000 amount. And then separately would be to reallocate funds from the grant writer and obligate those towards salaries.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay, so it may be best for the the vice mayor to rescind her motion and then make a new motion to do both items separately. So that,
You just said the wording needed to
oh,
be-
okay, okay,
I think I just needed to add IGA.
okay. So you want to just
But let
amend
him
it?
hear it.
Okay,
So what do you want me to do?
to rescind it and say it again to say that you want to do the IGA.
Okay, I would like to rescind my motion.
Okay.
And I move to allocate, oh no, I move to move $100,000 from the grant administrator ARPA line item to allocate and approve the IGA for the DDA in the amount of $50,000 and reallocate $50,000 back into the general fund salary line item.
Okay, all right. And then is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second to move the $100,000, the 50,000 from the grant administrator and allocate and approve the IGA with the DDA and move the $50,000 to the general fund. We need to say 2026. Because it's 2025 is for the DDA and 2026 is for the general
We don't
fund.
have to,
Okay,
we don't have to say 2020 now. You think we do?
yeah, you do, because it's
Well,
two
ask
different.
Steven.
Mr. Quinn, did you hear that part?
Yes, I think that, I don't think, I mean, you could allocate it to a particular year,
Mm-hmm.
but I would recommend just going ahead and doing 2025 to get it spent.
Okay,
Because we won't have an opportunity after this to choose another thing to spend it on.
okay. And and she already said the 50,000, so that covered, right, okay. Okay, is there any further discussion? Yes.
Excuse me, what?
Are y'all open to amending section 1, subsection A, to reading Clarkson will pay the $50,000 to the DDA upon identifying a consultant? And subsection C, under reporting, which says that the DDA shall provide a report to Clarkson by December 31st, to the DDA shall provide a report to Clarkson monthly, describing the use of funds paid to the DDA under this agreement.
Can you restate that, please?
Okay. In the IGA, section 1, scope of services, subsection A, payment to DDA. Are my colleagues open to restating the language? And it reads currently that the Clarkson shall pay $50,000 to the DDA not later than January 15th, 2025. My request is that it is amended to say that Clarkson shall pay $50,000 to the DDA upon identifying a consultant or identifying a consultant or having a contract. If the contract is too much, at least identifying someone. And then subsection C, reporting. The only thing I'm asking here is that we do not receive the report at the end of the year and that we receive a report on a monthly basis. That is it.
I can go for quarterly, but I need them to be working, not writing reports for us. That's the reason we changed the DDA. I wasn't gonna say it, but that's the reason. Oh, may I? Can I or no?
Well,
No,
So-
I was asking that question.
But listen to me. I never said they had to write a thing. They could give us an audio if you wanted to. You could give it to us on an email. But a report out is something that we haven't had. And they have a representative with the mayor here. John, you're at Brockett Pub most of the days. I know you live in Decatur, but if he chooses to come over, he can. But I would like to know what is happening. I can't help
Every
him if I
month.
don't know.
Every month.
Well,
Can it
if
not
you
be
think that
quarterly?
monthly is too much, you tell me. You on the board, John. Is monthly too much?
I will say we meet monthly, and it's the second Tuesday of every month. And I mean, no, I think, between the 7 of us, I mean, we could probably come up with something, I'm sure. But I would prefer quarterly.
I'm open to quarterly. John, if you say it's too much, I ask you a question. You give me an honest answer. If you say YT monthly is too much, I'm open to quarterly. Thank you, John. All right, but that still doesn't fulfill subsection A.
No, subsection A.
Yes,
Susan
I
has a
have a,
question.
So
Yes.
yes,
Susan.
I have a question for Councilmember Bell. By under the payment conditions, upon identifying a consultant, they could, how to put my question? They could identify a consultant and then find out that the cost would be prohibited from their standpoint. How, I understand that you want action in some action or some commitment in exchange for the 50,000, but for them to actually find consultants, I know there's been a recommendation, but are there other consultants that might be better, and how would they make a decision, and would they be interviewing them, and would the cost be a consideration, and would the consultant be available to handle the DDA for Clarkston based on their other workload? So I'm with you on the idea, but sort of what is the goal about? Do you want make a good faith effort, or you want half the money and then half money after they identify, or something like that? I'm trying to get there.
Yes,
Yes, go
Councilmember
ahead.
Hood, great questions. The only thing I said was identify a consultant.
Right. That's
Okay.
The
it.
time
That's it.
frame, the logistics, they would have to
Okay.
deal with that. But I can't manage a
Okay.
separate entity
So they could identify one
that fits
despite
into the
their
money that they
best
have.
efforts. It might not be the one that they ultimately end up with, is what you're saying.
Identify a consultant
Consultant.
that meets the money that they have that will go along in a contract with them.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So, Councilman Carroll.
I just don't see why we need to hash all this consultant and everything out tonight. This is the last meeting for the end of the year. The public didn't get very much notice of this. We haven't all had a chance to review everything. I think tonight we just put the 100,000 in the general fund, then we get more details and can have a more considered analysis of this in January. I just don't see the rush to give the 50,000 tonight as opposed to giving the 50,000 like a few weeks from now. And we might get something wrong. I don't see the need to hurry the 50,000.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Carroll. Okay. Ready for a question?
Just wanted to take a statement.
Yeah, are we going
So
to?
I share the concern. I mean, I think even in this conversation, again, as I stated before, we've had some concerns be brought up. I do think it would be wiser for us to, again, if we're making a multi-year decision and setting you guys up for success and making sure that we, dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, that we just give it one, give it a little bit of space to make sure that we do it right. Again, as Councilman Carroll noted, we've got a lot of this information, right before this meeting. I appreciate the work that was put into it. But when we're dealing with, with something, the effect of $50,000 that, has stipulations attached to it, we want to make sure that y'all have, again, the resources you need, but also that we're clear in what we need in return from that. And so I think in light of that, I completely agree. I think we should allow this to make sure we don't lose the ARPA money, as I stated before, but then also make sure that, we've got our ducks in the row before just moving something through, so we don't end up in the same situation that we are. And, I want to say one final thing too. Absolutely support the work that y'all are doing. Please don't take this as a, as a criticism or, we don't want to give y'all money. We just want to make sure that we set you up for success, but also set the city and the taxpayers up for success as well, and make a really solid agreement. And so if we're kind of, again, pushing this through on the 30th, and, we've all got a lot of this information, right as we sat down for the meeting, that seems wise to maybe give it a little bit of time, make sure that everything is lined up. I know a number of my colleagues have made that point on numerous occasions before. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Councilman Perkins. Okay, you ready for the question? All in favor to move $100,000 from the ARPA grant administrator and to allocate and approve the IGA with the DDA and to move 50,000 to the general fund, say aye.
Aye.
Did you say aye?
I got a question.
Yes. Well, we're saying ayes now.
I know, but
The modifications, do we have to say
Yes.
the modifications?
We would have to do the modifications separate. So right now, we just have the motion out there.
That don't make sense,
What do you mean?
because maybe her vote depends on the modifications.
Okay.
I'm just saying, we agreed to those changes,
Mhm.
but we don't have to say them all over again, right?
So
As long
Council,
as the clerk
Councilwoman
has the
Bell,
changes.
Councilwoman Bell, we from a DDA will identify a consultant before the 15th because we have our meeting before the 15th
in the reporter.
and the reporting, and we will do quarterly reporting.
Okay.
Okay.
Proceed.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. Motion
How did-
passed. Count, Carol.
I'm nay.
Okay, thank you. Motion passed. Thank you all. And so now we'll move into executive
I
session.
have a motion.
Yes,
I move to end this meeting and go into executive session
for,
for a personnel matter.
okay, it's been properly moved and seconded that we move into executive session for personnel matters. All in favor, say aye.
I
Okay, thank you all. And so we'll see you later.
see ya.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay.
Enjoy. Bring me back.